for cold, hard sports talk with your hosts, Ty Gore, Matt Barrett, and Jake Woods.
Alrighty, boys, our guest today, we go into the broadcast booth once again. Just a couple weeks ago, we had Brandon Crow on. Well, we have his former roommate on now, currently the voice of the Okatoks Oilers, former voice of the Melfort Mustangs, Nipawin Hawks, Humboldt Broncos, Tisdale Trojans. Gino, am I missing any?
I didn't actually do any Trojans, but
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I did the unfortunate saga of the Long Lake Hockey League, which was, and I also did the White Court Wolverines when they were a Junior B team in the Northwest Junior Hockey League, and a couple other things. But
okay,
I've been everywhere, man.
This is Gino De Paoli, and we are happy to have him on because we now give him a chance to put him on the platform that we put Brandon Crow on a couple weeks ago. But first off, Gino, how you doing, man? You staying, sane and without much hockey?
Surprisingly, yes, for about the last 3 months, because it is Groundhog Day. It's one of those things where, okay, well, the world's still in shambles, so that's cool. And the U.S. is somehow 60% vaccinated or close to it with single doses, and Alberta can't even get like 2% or what. I think it's more than that, but you can kind of tell where my allegiances lie, how this country has performed in desperate times. All we can do is play hockey, as far as I'm concerned. We're not qualified to run a country. It seems to be right now. So I'm a little vulgar that way from being from Southern Alberta, I guess, the stereotypical Albertan that I am.
Well, exactly. I mean, so Gino, first off, let's learn a little bit about you. Oh yeah, first let's do our beer. We've got some beer. Gino,
I was thirsty. I'm jumping the gun.
You consider yourself, correct me if I'm wrong, a craft beer snob?
Partially. I'd call
partially
myself,
okay.
Because I don't drink all the IPAs or the stouts, but I do enjoy supporting craft beers. It started during the pandemic.
More of an enthusiast.
Yeah. And I enjoy sours, so I call myself a sour sommelier. So that's all I can do there.
So first off, what are you drinking right now? And we got to do our cheap good scale. On the scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very cheap and very bad, 10 being very good and very expensive.
Boy. Buckle up. I want to see where this is going. I've got a raspberry sour. It's golden sour with raspberry. I can't remember, the brewery's in Victoria. It's actually pretty good. So
there you go.
I like it. I got to do a little bit of a scale of it. It's about a 6 or a 7 on my scale right now.
Okay. You know what? We can take that. It's right around
respectable.
Respectable. Yeah. It's above average in our realm of beers for sure. Considering some of us
sours are different though, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you've never had one, you'll hate the first one you have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess we'll get into your career a little bit. First off, you've been calling games for a while now. How did you manage to first get into play-by-play for hockey?
Well, my passion kind of ran pretty deep. I grew up south of Calgary on a farm called Cayley, Alberta. It's a hamlet, and I always had an interest. What actually got me into broadcasting itself was not actually hockey, but just because of my agricultural roots. It was actually chuck wagon racing that actually got me into it. And there was a guy named Joe Carberry, who was the voice of the Rangeland Derby, the Calgary Stampede. That's where I first you get paid to do this. This is so cool. Yeah, and went from there. And then I think even that winter, I started watching hockey a lot more. And my parents were season ticket holders still for the Flames during the dark days of the 90s, and they got all the 80s hockey. So I was always wondering what all the fuss is about when you're in your 10 years old or whatever. And I started listening to Peter Marr, who's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, the voice of the Flames for, oh man, it was a long time. And that's when I really got the itch and kind of started studying a little bit of who I wanted to kind of be like. And everybody wants to be like Peter Marr, but there's only one Peter Marr. You just leave, he leaves big shoes to fill. No, those shoes have left and you're putting your shoes in because you're not filling those things. So, and it just grew from there. I started when I went to broadcasting school. I barely got in, squeaked in. I spent a year in Europe first and partied it up and missed all the interviews to go to SAIT and Mount Royal, and I was waitlisted because I was in a different time zone, and I had to do stuff that was kind of like doing a Zoom call, but think of this circa 2006 and 2007 when Wi-Fi was just starting to be a big deal. And it was super hard, but I finally got in and did my training in SAIT, and then didn't get a job right out of college because it was a recession, and I guess I wasn't that good. Like I say, you kind of get defeated pretty early in life, and did a year at the University of Calgary. Then I took a chance and applied on Milkman Unlimited to CJVR or CK750, and I had started doing color for the Okatoks Oilers on the side while I was going to university. And apparently, when I applied, I was the only one that filled all the blanks on the resume. So I probably got in there by default because I actually read what the listing asked for, and I was the only one who actually filled out everything. I had like weather, I had sports, I had news, I had play-by-play, I had, I think, a commercial, and the guy's like, that was Cambly and Daryl Skender. And
Yeah.
I asked my first day when I got the job, I said, so why did you pick me? They're like, to be honest, you're the only one that actually read instructions. I was like, that's probably the first time I actually ever listened to the instructions. So
I can hear Cam saying that right now.
Yeah, like you actually followed along, right?
Yeah.
And Cam is, you want to go with a kind of a human being that Cam is. He's the best boss I've ever had in media, period. It's like the best human being. His partner, Daryl Skender, well, we can get into that a little bit later, I guess, as we get into our stories about that. Yeah. But I respect Cam to hell. And even when I went back into radio in the mid 2000 or 2010s, I use a lot of his teaching still, and they're still being used today.
Yeah. I obviously I know that firsthand as well. So when you get to Melfort, you've got Daryl Skender, Cam Lee as your bosses. Just like, was there a little bit of shock coming to Melfort and starting to call junior A hockey games?
No, to be honest, I wasn't shocked because I'm from small town Alberta. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that blew my mind actually was I stayed at the De Paoli Ranch, which is where Brandon Crow and I lived together, and that's what the name was called. And Brandon named it that, not me. I called it the Big Brother House because like there was just a rotation of CJVR degenerates that lived there, the cheapest rent in the world. And I got to there and my phone wouldn't work at all. Like my number wouldn't like dial out or anything on my cell phone. I had a BlackBerry Storm, and I said, "How come my phone doesn't work here?" And the engineer, what the hell is his name? Bain. He's like, "Oh, do you have like 3G on your phone?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Like, who the hell doesn't?" "Oh, it probably doesn't work because there's no tower for 3G here yet." I was like, "You've got to be shitting me, right?" Like, so I have to get a new phone because my phone doesn't work here.
Yeah, your phone was too advanced.
Yeah, too advanced. I was like, is this province literally 10 years behind the rest of the world? And they didn't have recycle bins. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting because it's not like I'm an environmentalist, but I was like, I throw my bottles like, oh, we just throw everything in the garbage here. I was like,
yep.
Okay, yeah, but
I was the same.
Your mind is blown, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It was just super weird, but I jumped in and did the best I could right away. And it was right at the end of spring, and hockey was over, and football season was started. So it was a really weird transition, but it gave me time to work on some things and try to work out some kinks and try to build some friendships, which we did. And I kind of made a couple friends, but you know what? My experience, I wasn't there very long. I kind of had my head down and trying to get to the next place or see where it was going to go. But yeah, it was a little bit of a whirlwind from there.
So you're calling hockey games your first season there. You and Daryl Skender are calling games for 3 teams, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Melfort Mustangs, Nipawin Hawks, Humboldt Broncos, all together at the same time.
And the Saskatchewan Huskies, but I didn't do any of those because I was the backup. I was the backup, and I was told you'll never call a Huskies game unless I'm on my deathbed. I was like, good to know, pal. Like, great. I'm just trying to learn the tricks of the trade here, and here's Daryl like putting his foot down right away. You'll never touch a Huskies game. They're too. I'm like I've known you for like a month. Like, okay, I get it. I'm low, man. You got me. No, my first game was like I think everybody else. It seems like everybody gets to go to Larange for their first game, and
oh, really?
Everybody seems to rip their pants the first game. I was no exception to that. Brand new suit. Ripped the crotch wide open, and it was like war. It was like what +10 or something. Like it was still September. Like it was pretty nice out.
This is climbing up the ladder to Larange.
Yeah, the ladder.
Okay.
Then I was trying to do like a Tarzan move to like throw the equipment over my head to like just hop it over. I made it work, but then I ripped my pants in the process. And I just looked around. I was like, well, if this is the road that it takes to get to the AHL, like here we go. Started from the bottom, and that was rock bottom to me. Was going to Larange, like the worst to me still. The Mel Hagelin Uniplex, the biggest dump I've ever been into in junior A. And I did some junior B rinks that are just as bad, but Larange took the cake. Luckily, they had a really good hockey team that year. That was the only thing that was keeping them keeping everybody sane at that point. And it was a long day, and we lost the game. It was also Doug Johnson's first game as a head coach, so we both were kind of nervous. We didn't know who we were yet, like phone interviews, and never knew. And got the patented Subway order that Brandon was talking about. I'm like, cool, man, Subway. Like after every game, why not? And it gets old real fast. But it was.
You didn't get tuna and hot sauce though, did you?
No, I think I was liked by the coaches.
Okay.
Brandon, I don't know. Like I was also the backup guy, right? I wasn't the main guy, so I think our stories were a little bit different. And it was just one thing after another, and yeah, I heard those stories from Brandon. I was like, Jesus, like, what does the guy have to do? Like, he pissed off coaches, but I've pissed off commissioners and bosses. So we are on totally different sides of the world on when it comes to that. But you can go for days and days about that. So it was a riot. I made some really good friends working with Melford. I was working with Melford a lot because I wasn't getting the bites. Daryl wouldn't give me the extra bites when the Huskies were over. He would go right in and take his 8 jillion hours of overtime and bank it in the summer sort of approach. And and he wouldn't do webcasts. So I did all the Mustang webcasts, and I got a really good relationship with Daryl Mann, who I still speak to this day. He was he's beaten Sidney Crosby. This guy has coached a lot of years in his time in junior A and midget AAA or U18s, whatever they're going to call it next. And he was like, I learned so much from Daryl that year. And I lived like 3 blocks away from him. I like walked and had beers with him in his backyard in the summer. And he was in the last year of his contract. He says, Gino, like, you never know with coaches. I could be gone. I'm like, no, you can't be fired. Daryl, you're a coach. No one gets fired in junior. And I was like, okay. Every year that I had gone somewhere new, a coach had been fired. And that year, Daryl got let go at the end when they lost to Larange in the playoffs, and he got fired. I was like, I was so choked when that happened. And then the year when I went to Whitecourt, the coach that started that season, he got canned. And even in my last one, eventually the coach got let go. So I'm like, am I bad luck that whenever I show up, like a coach gets canned or something like that? So it's not, it's not now that I think about it, but 20-year-old Gino was absolutely devastated that he thought it was his fault that he got a coach fired when he had absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever.
You mentioned Daryl Mann, who is someone we need to have on this podcast very soon because we want him to tell some stories. Because I've dealt with Daryl in his time with the Trojans. He's an absolute awesome dude. You have a good story about Daryl.
I do. If I was to ever write a book, I'd call it The Night I Almost Killed Daryl Mann. And we were going, when I was at the radio station, we were able to get tickets. We didn't get box seat or like a press box seat. So we could actually get like a cheap seat and cover the game, and you could go watch the game. And it was like minus 10, 15. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to score some points with the head coach of the Melford Mustangs. Like it was right. And it was right before the Grey Cup. It was playoffs. It was the West semi. And I was like, Daryl, I got 2 tickets to the game. I have to cover. It's a little different. Like we just go as fans. After the game, you have to wait for me for like an hour. He's like, well, just give me the keys to the Jeep and I'll sit in the Jeep and wait for you. I was like, done. So on the way, it's like a 3-hour
Keep it be nice and warm when you get in.
Exactly. It worked out fine. I had a gas card. Who cares? Give me a credit card. We're good to go. He's like, it's not like we Spanish. He was like, if we get into trouble, it'll be on the Melford Mustangs. I was like, okay, this is going to be great. And he said, Gino, we have to stop at Red Lobster first. I was like, okay. I'm like, why? Isn't there a Red Lobster? He's like, there's only a Red Lobster in Regina. And of course, I'm from Calgary, so there's Red Lobster in like 3 locations. I was like, okay, this is a delicacy. We're going to have lobster. We're going to watch football. it's gonna be a great time. So we go, and I drive from Melfort. It's a little bit of a snowstorm, not hard. Like I've driven through like 3 feet of snow in a Bobcat and a loader down a highway. So this is nothing. But we're coming to a set of train tracks, and I was
One's at
talking to
Watson.
I think so, maybe.
Yeah.
I maybe. And there's a train coming, and I'm just yakking away to Daryl. We're talking about things. He's like, Gino. I was like, well, what, Daryl? What do you want me to say? Like, Gino, what? Gino. And I was like, holy fuck. And I just like slam on the brakes, like big black skid mark on the highway. And it's just like, wow, Gino. I almost had to die with the radio guy from the Melfort Mustangs. Like, what a great story. Wow. His big thing is wow. When he says wow, you know you've got it. But that's the story of how I almost killed Daryl Mann, and not the last incident I've had with station vehicles where I almost killed somebody.
Okay, well, we've got a few of these station vehicles, but there's one story that we need your side of. So Brandon Crow tells us a story about how he moved in, and when he moved in, you're sitting on the couch playing MLB The Show.
That is true.
Doesn't even help him move in.
Nope, did not help. Well, here's part of the story that Brandon didn't tell, and it's fine. Was I sitting on the couch playing MLB The Show? Yes, because that's one of the best damn video games I've ever played in my life.
Absolutely.
And I had just got back, I think, from my sister's wedding, and I was swamped. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. And I knew about Brandon coming. I've never really met him yet. I met him a couple times, and I went home, and he did my shift, which is fine. I love Brandon like a brother. Like, he's one of my favorite people in the world. But at the time, you don't know what these guys are going to be like when they're as eager and hungry as you are. And I'm sitting on my couch. He's like, "Hey, I'm Brandon." I'm like, "Cool, man. Like, you're living here." Like, and the reason no one helped me move in when I moved to Melbourne. Yeah. I moved myself in, and I was like, you know what? He'll be fine. I looked. He had a little car, and I'm like, well, if he needs my help, he'll ask, and I'll go and help him. He never asked for help. So I'm like, okay, man, that's the two-way street. Like, you ask for help. I'm not going to just give it unless, if he has a grand piano, that's what I'm going to probably get up and maybe help him push it into the house. But that's the story there is like, yeah, I did not help Brandon move in. It was actually pretty funny because I think he thought I hated him for a while, and I didn't. But I was like, okay, I'm a little bit older. I've gone through this racket. I don't care. It's my Sunday off. Like, I'm not helping anybody. I don't think I got up that day. I had a long night the night before. So it was one of those things. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to help unless I have to.
But and then he also tells how for the first little while of you guys working together, he would show up maybe a little bit earlier than you. And it got to a point where he almost showed up like, I think it was like 45 minutes before, and you're sprinting in, like, still drying off basically.
Well, I got it. I got it right away. I was like, okay, I'd come into the station at like 8:45 or 22 or maybe 10 to if you're a little running behind or you slept in, and I walked usually. I walked or drove my truck. And all of a sudden the guy keeps getting up. I'm like, okay, eager beaver, like whatever. And I started, I'm like, okay, you want to go? We'll go. And it wasn't the first go, but it was the one time, I don't know what was going on. We had to be at the station earlier that day, and Brandon went super early, and I was in the shower and I hear the door slam. I'm like, and I looked out because the window's right by where the back door is at the house. I'm like, this son of a bitch is already going to work. Like, he's trying to score points. So I'm like, that's it. I slammed everything off. I did dry my hair. There wasn't bubbles in it, but my shirt was just soaked, right? Like, that part I will contest to it. And I just said, okay, like, enough's enough here. Like, I didn't have bubbles in my hair, but it was actually pretty funny. And that's when Cam's like, did you even dry it? I said, well, frickin' goody two shoes over here decided to come in early. He's like, it's not a contest, guys. So I was like, well, we're competitors, me and Brandon, so that's what it turned out to be. And then after that, I just started showing up, and it was like, Gino, like, I think Daryl said, Gino, you're late. I just said, fuck off, Daryl. I just sat down and did my work. So, and that's a story all in itself.
Oh man, that one's funny to hear it from both sides now. I'm glad we gave you an opportunity to defend yourself.
Well,
this now.
I'm hearing this. I'm like, okay, everybody's gonna think like I'm an idiot or something. Like I just was an oaf, but I guess I kind of was. But I don't know. It was just, and I really like, and I totally get it now. I was like, yeah, he's a little eager, which was fine. But to this day, me and Brandon still talk, and we have the same aspirations. We've applied for many jobs at the same time, and I knew when I applied for the Brandon Wheat Kings job. He said, well, I can't remember who it was. I believe it was the station manager. I got a full interview. I got like the full blown interview, and he says, yeah, we really like your stuff. And I knew deep down, I was like, well, Brandon Crow is from Brandon, and he's right there, and that is his dream job, and he knows the place. I'm like, I didn't have high expectations I'd get that one. And then I found out I think I was like in the top 3 or something like that, and Brandon won it. And the right person won that job. Like, who else would you want in Brandon, Manitoba than a kid named Brandon from Brandon? And he's very skilled at it at the same time. And I think he fits right in with that whole crowd. So I've been close a couple of times, and I'm quite content with being in Okatoks until the right opportunity comes. You don't have to just leave to go, like, you don't have to move to just move to a new place. Like, if you're happy somewhere and you can make it work, all the power to you. I'm hoping something in Alberta will open up for me, and that's kind of, I want to be home. Always big on the home thing for me. And my dad passed a couple years ago, and kind of want to always stay a little closer home to the farm. And I'm here right now, but it's something I always have in the back of my head. Home is where the heart is.
Yeah, there you go. We have a couple other stories that you kind of mentioned to me that we need to get through. You mentioned station vehicles.
Yeah.
You almost sent the station vehicle airborne, or it did go airborne?
Definitely went airborne.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely went airborne. And this started like an ongoing, like, just everything that I had done with Daryl. Daryl was kind of a dick to me sometimes. Like, it was just kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm just like, what did I ever do to you? Like, I'm just trying to fit in. And I think it's because I'm from Alberta, to be honest. I don't think a lot of people like Albertans, and I don't know why, but maybe I do at the same time. I don't know. And it was a long lake hockey game, and I hated doing long lake games. It was senior. The game started at 8:30, and they're in the middle of nowhere. So you got to work a full shift, and then you're doing a full game. You're driving to wherever you got to go. So I'm driving, and it gets better, because I started driving. There's warnings of freezing rain in Watrous. I'm like, oh, good. And there was like, well, watch if the game is canceled, they'll phone you. I was like, okay. I'm driving all this way, and I get to the Watrous rig, or maybe it was Leroy or something like that. Anyway, I go, and the rig is dead empty, like dead empty. I'm just like, okay, I don't think there's a game tonight. They're like, oh yeah, could you not see the roads? I was like, yeah, I'm driving on the roads right now. Like, I know how bad they were to begin with. So I'm like, okay, and 800 swear words in the Jeep, and back we go. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going back. I still got paid. It didn't matter. I'm just going back. And in Watrous, there's a 110 by Manitou Beach. That's where where the story goes to. And it's just a long bend in the road. And I'm driving along, just got music cranked and just doing my thing. And all of a sudden I start to turn. The Jeep is not turning with me. It's just gliding into a ditch. I'm like, well, this is it, guys. I'm going to go face first into a ditch and die in Watrous. What happens? I hit the ditch, and I do go airborne a bit. I didn't go straight into the ditch like that. I kind of got a little bit of air. And I just thought, and for that split second that I'm still crapping my pants, like, I'm going to die. I'm going to wreck the Jeep. I'm going to die. Like, this is how I get to die, is not calling a long lake hockey game. Like, I'm going to be pissed for the rest of my life. Get down, and I land in the ditch, and it was a low enough spot. It wasn't a high grade. It was kind of like this. I'm like, I got a shot at this if I can get out. If I sank it, I was stuck in Manitou Beach for the night. So I hit it, and whatever, the Wildcat in me guns it. I just pinned it. Like, I was in the air, and as soon as I hit the snow, I'm like, if I stop in the snow, I'm done. So I just gunned it as hard as I could. I just went, like it was like a sewing machine, like how much power this Jeep had. Because I think every vehicle had been bagged before that. And I guess, did you drive it too?
I didn't drive the Jeep. I drove the Dodge Nitro, is what it was.
Never had a Dodge Nitro.
Oh.
But yeah, anyway, this is some Jeep, whatever. I pinned it, and I got on the angle, but all of a sudden it tilted like this. It was a slough in the drift. And it went up like this, and I climbed. I just went, yee! I just flopped it. right on this approach, and I sat there and I stopped. Like I just stopped and spinning. I spun my tires just to get out. And I just went. I put it in park. I got out and I just looked around. I'm like, okay, did I hit something? Is somebody dead? Like, what is happening? And I just look around. I'm just like, holy! Like, I took a piss because I thought I was going to piss myself anyway. And outside, I'm like, okay, let's see if this thing still works. Like, I might have wrecked the undercarriage completely. Nope, it was fine, running okay. Just I putted back from Manitou Beach to Melfort. I don't think I got home till like 1 or 2 in the morning or something. It was really bad. Like and I parked it in the garage at the radio station. I just looked around. I'm like, okay, no one's dead. The car seems to be fine. It was steaming because there was a lot of snow underneath the undercarriage. I'm like, well, it's just gonna melt here tonight. And I just locked the keys, put my mileage down. I even wrote a report that there was no games because I was so mad that day. I was so pissed. And the next morning, everybody's looking around like, did you actually go to Watrous last night? I'm like, yeah. Well, the game was canceled. I'm like, yeah, no one decided to tell me about this. And I was like, they're like, well, you should have just got a hotel. I'm like, I am a guy who works in radio. I make like $800 a month or $800 every 2 weeks. I'm like, do you think I have that kind of fucking money to do this? Like, well, we want to reimburse you. I'm like, yeah, it takes you like 3 months. And I was so mad. And Bane again, he's like, did you go in the ditch last night? I was like, nope, didn't do a thing because there was so much snow packed underneath the undercarriage. The heat finally melted. It was like a swamp in the garage, and everything drained in. It was just like water everywhere. Everybody kind of knew about it. I just denied it, and as my good friend Derek Stewart always said to me, deny, deny, deny. So that's where we got to that. And yeah, that Daryl, and that's when I think our feud kind of got a little worse. He just said, well, that's pretty selfish of you to just go and then come back and you charge the hours of the gas. Or he said something like that. And I had a headphone in or something. I just said, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, I did this because we were supposed to do it, and nobody told me. No one tells you, and that's okay. And I'm sure there was a few more swearing, and then there was more yelling and screaming. And I knew my time was going to be near me after that. So that kind of was the beginning of the end in Melfort a little bit for me, but no regrets whatsoever. I would go back and do everything again in a heartbeat.
Oh man. I mean, hey, we're glad everything's okay. Like, we're glad everybody is alive and nobody broke any bones or anything like that, right? My first day, my first hockey game in Melfort, second day on the job, I hit a deer with the station vehicle. So
there's that. Points, eh?
Yeah, so
nice.
There's that. I called Cam in an absolute panic at 2:30 in the morning because I was coming back from a game in Flin Flon.
He was probably awake, so it was fine.
Well, he said he was just about to wake up. Like, his alarm was set for like half an hour later. So I was like, whatever. I'm like, Cam, I'm sorry. I just hit a deer. Like, I'm sorry. What do I do? And he's like, relax. It's fine. Like, can you drive it back? He's like, can you drive it back? I'm like, yeah, I think so. He's like, if you can't, I will come pick you up. I'm like, no, I think I can do it. Yeah, and I'm on, for those who are listening from the Melfort area, Highway 335, sorry. Going from Gronlid to the Armley Corner was the highway I was on. Not a great highway.
Jesus, you were close to home. How did you hit that close?
Was there any thought going into trying to save the deer? Like,
nope, I don't even know where.
Put it over his misery, man. You run that.
Don't even know. I hit the deer and kept driving for a good 700-800 meters.
Nice.
Because I was so panicked. And then I finally stopped and was like, okay, like, calm down. But that's enough about my story, I guess.
Oh man. Well, it's funny with deer. You mentioned I'm in Whitecourt, in the Northwest Junior Hockey League. Their games start at 8:32, so there'll be late games from Grand Prairie or Sexsmith or Fort St. John or something like that. Well, maybe not Fort St. John, but we were driving back and I just hear this giant thud. Everybody's like, hey! I was like, why are we cheering? Everybody's like, that's the third deer in 3 years. I was like, there's just blood on the side of the bumper on the bus. And it's scary now because you talk about the Humboldt Bronco situation, but I was like, there's been a lot more close calls than that. I've had a couple. I had one in the AJ a couple years or a year after the Humboldt thing, And I've never been able to sleep on a bus since. I just don't. I don't trust drivers anymore. But on the serious note, it just scared me. I'm like, there are kids here that are still petrified from that. Like, we got to be
Yeah.
careful on the roads, right? Like, it's
Oh
crazy.
man.
Yeah, like
Deers.
the cheering for deers was hilarious though. Like, it's one of my favorite stories of all time.
Hey, the streak lives on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another story where you were playing golf in the snow in your
Oh
shorts?
yeah. Yes, I was. It's on Facebook. It's on
What?
Facebook. I think so. It's with me and Ken Singer went golfing one day in the spring. It was right
Okay.
before I left, and there was still snow. And he called me because he was my landlord. I thought I was getting evicted or something, or I did something wrong again. Ken Singer's one of the best humans I've
Yep.
ever met. And he's like, "Do you want to go golfing?" I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, there is snow. I was like, "No, holes. I think it was hole 9 and hole 1 had melted enough that you could play it." And he's like, "Well, I'm the president of the Melford Golf Club, and I need to practice." I was like, "Okay, like, what do you want me to do?" He was in his gum boots and his long pants and a cigar. I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna have a little bit of fun here." I put my golf shoes on and I got my shorts on, and I've got a t-shirt on. I didn't have a golf shirt on, and
How warm was it?
it was like +3. Like,
Okay.
it's fine. And I was just like, he's like, "Yeah, well, keep playing," going back and forth, and we are losing balls. And I was like, "What do you want to do?" Like, they're in the snow. He's like, "Don't worry about it. Like, it's no big deal." We played like 6 holes. It was hilarious. And he's like, "What'd you score there?" I'm like, "We're keeping score right now. Like, I can't even see my ball half the time because it's in snow drifts or something like that. I have to go find it." He's like, "Well, you got to keep score." I was like, fine, an 8. Let's just call it an 8. It's a Sunday afternoon. I have nothing better to do, but I enjoy golfing in the snow at the Melford Golf Club. That was a treat, and I'll never forget stuff like that. I'll have to send you the picture. It's on Facebook somewhere.
Okay. There's a couple. We've got so many stories that I think you want to tell too. So you get back to Alberta in Whitecourt when it's when the Whitecourt Wolverines, were they the Wolverines at the time?
They've always been the Wolverines.
They will always
Whether
have
they
been?
were Junior
Okay.
B or Junior A, yeah.
So you managed to go start calling Junior B games there. What was the Junior B scene like in Northwestern Alberta?
Also, just what was your opinion on Whitecourt? Because we've heard a lot of
Yes.
opinions on Whitecourt on this podcast. So
Oh wow, really?
We've had a couple. We've had a
yeah,
couple.
we've heard a
opinions,
couple,
yeah.
a lot of varying reports. I believe it was Alex Rondeau said, I believe the quote was, "I fucking hated Whitecourt."
Yeah, I think that might have been the
Wow.
quote. Yep.
Well, first of all, on a serious note, the Whitecourt Wolverines are owned by the best owner in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, and that's Brett Stark. It's not even up for debate, I think. Like, just he is one of the best owners. And again, it goes back to being a better human being, which Brent is. And that's probably what kept me from leaving Whitecourt mid-season, because I had nothing else really going for me at that point. I had a kind of a rough breakup from Whitecourt, and I transferred. And I just knew I just couldn't take some of the stuff that was happening in Saskatchewan. That had nothing to do with people that I adore and love there, like Cam and Brandon. It was just other stuff. I was like, I got to get out of here. It's just time. And like, I guess I rubbed some people the wrong way. And I said, you know what? I'll go to Junior B. And I got to be a sports director. I got to be the news director for a little while. I got to be the boss, and I got to learn that. So I'll never forget that. As much as things happened, I could have been the voice of the RBC Cup. It led me to some better stuff down the road, like learning how to manage and work and just do the morning shift and do live radio reads. It's something I won't forget, and I got to be closer to home. So it kind of came all back together that way. As it comes for the Northwest Junior Hockey League, the Whitecourt Wolverines were amazing. They were so good, and they won the whole thing. They won the Northwest Junior Hockey League and Alberta Provincials, because they didn't have like an RBC Cup tournament. You had your provincials in the Keystone Cup. They didn't win that one, but I called a long championship run. You know what? It is Jungle Bee. The name Jungle Bee. It's a bad. It kind of rubs the wrong way. But you know what I'll say here, guys, today about guys that play Junior B, especially that team, that Whitecourt team. They worked oil patch. They worked hard jobs, like hard labor jobs, like in the prime of the oil patch, $20 to $25 an hour, and then go play Junior B or practice. We would be coming home from a game. I would have the morning off. I'd have like the next day off. They had big service rigs, welding trucks or service trucks, and they're humming. They'd all go to Denny's at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, well, there's no point in going to bed. We got to go to work at 5. I was just like, holy shit. Like, I'll never forget that, those kind of people. Like, that's blue collar.
Yeah.
That's what
Northern
you
Alberta for you.
That's Northern Alberta, I guess.
Yep.
And it was such a good group of kids. It was unbelievable. Like the 21-year-olds, and I was only a couple years older than them at the time. So it was really fun to be a part of that. And they asked me to party. And of course you go party and you're just like, okay, I gotta go. Like, this is not my crowd whatsoever. Like, and they partied hard, they worked hard, and they played even harder, and it was awesome. And some good kids have played some Div 3, like in pro, a couple junior A guys, and they just light up senior. Like, they have some pretty good senior teams out there. So
Yep.
I have a lot of respect for that team, even though it wasn't the highest caliber. It actually got me really prepared to go to Okatoks, which I'll never forget my time with Brent Stark. He opened so many doors for me, and just, he gave me confidence in myself. And I didn't have a whole lot when I got to Whitecourt. And he probably gave me too much confidence, because now I guess I have a little bit of an ego. So but I love the man. That man and his family have been through a lot in the last few years, so I'm always thinking of them all the time. I don't get to talk to him every day, but if I see him in the hallway, if I see him somewhere, if I text him, he'll chirp me, I'll chirp him back. He's an incredible ambassador to the game.
And you then you mentioned going to Okatoks and where you're at now. How did that sort of drum up, and what's it been like in Okatoks?
Oh, that's a good story too, actually, how that kind of came out. It had just finished Junior B provincials, which were held in Okatoks. So I was home for the weekend, or for the week, and there was talks of the guy who had done color. Sorry, excuse me, beer. Either way, he had wanted out of Okatoks for a personal reason, and I said, well, this is an opportunity. I was quitting anyway. I was going to go back to university and finish my degree in communications, which I finally did over time. And I literally referenced him, like, if you want out of here, the junior A team had just been dropped. I broke that news, and he applied for the job and he got it. And then as soon as I knew he got it, it was like 30 seconds later. And I said, to Don McCracken, the news director, it was at High River and Sun Country and the Eagle in Okatoks. They were the same station. And they just said, I was wondering you'd call. That's what they said. I was wondering when you let me know. It was like a half an hour after I found out. And I don't even think Chris Colwell had put in his notice yet. And I said, hey, I'm your guy. They're like, okay, just shut up and relax. We got you. We're in, right? So I'm like, so I started.
It was like 5 minutes.
Like literally 5 minutes. Yeah, it was pretty quick. And I was like, I wanted that gig so badly, just because I was close to home, university. It all worked out. And I'm still there though. So I guess that's worked out, and I've seen some pretty good hockey since. So that's how that kind of came about. And I was in college and university writing thesis. I wrote a thesis, then called game 7 of the AJHL final. My grades were terrible. I had to go back and finish some electives the year after because I just couldn't keep up.
So like you said, there's been some pretty good players to come out of your time in the AJHL, especially with Okatoks. The first one that comes to mind is Jacob Bernard Docker. How cool was it to see him, and how good was he?
The credo that Jacob had was Cale Makar Light. That's kind of what they called him going into the draft. It's true. Yeah. But you know what? He's a little more of a two-way defender than Cale is in for an NHL if he's going to stick, because that's a pretty deep decor that's in Ottawa right now. But he was the defensive defenseman of the year in the NCHC in Div 1 for North Dakota. Like, this guy's won D-Man of the year wherever he's gone. Great shot, patience, sees the game incredibly well, picks up pace, slows it down, has a great shot. I haven't seen it yet in the NHL, but when it comes to the NCAA and Junior A ranks, he was playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers at times. He was just the most professional hockey player you could ask for. Like, genuine, down to earth. Like, I sent him a text when he finally signed his entry level, and he texted me back. Like, I didn't expect that. Didn't expect it at all. Like, I don't have that great a connection with kids anymore because I'm a lot older than them. And he texted me, and then even Dylan Holloway, when he signed his deal with Edmonton this week, left him a message. Text me back right away on Instagram. And again, another good quality human being. I've been able to see now, actually two, and three when Dylan does play, and he will play, believe me. And Rhett Gardner from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, he got drafted by Dallas. He played in Okatoks. He didn't get drafted while he's in Okatoks, but he was an Oilers alumni, and I actually got to go watch him play at the University of Denver and North Dakota in Denver. I went down for a weekend for my 30th birthday with my friend, and we actually ended up with there was Oiler alumni on the other side of this. This is good. This is a pretty good little story too. And after
let's hear this one.
Remember, I'm 30 years old in Denver, Colorado, and legalized weed. I'm not a stoner by any means. Like I can't. But when in Rome, right? When in Rome in Denver, and everybody's eating edibles. I'm like, this is cool, man. Like there's ice cream sandwiches with THC in them. Wanted to scarf a couple of those down. I was like, that my buddy who does use it a little bit, he's like, dude, you can't do this. I was like, why? He's like, you've never had any of this. You're going to die. I was like, well, it's my birthday. I got the Broncos game tomorrow. Like, I got a party. So I end up going, and the players didn't do it. They're clean as whistles. Right. Just have a few drinks. That's all they do. And we go to this house where the former captain of the Oilers, Tarek Hammond, was. And he's like, want to come play some Chell before we go out? I was like, I'm stoned. I'm 30. I'm in a college dorm, like a college house. Yeah, I'll play some Chell with you. Why not? And I ended up playing to the guy next to me. It was a great experience. If you ever get to go to an NCAA college hockey game in Denver against North Dakota, do it. It was so awesome. But I ended up playing. I'm like, this guy is right next to me. Like, he's so familiar. It was Troy Terry, who is on the team. It's Troy Terry with the Anaheim Ducks. I'll play for the Anaheim Ducks. He's like, what's up, man? I was like, you had 2 goals and assists tonight. He's like, yep. I was like, you beat Team Canada at the World Juniors. How have I not seen you until right now? I was like, I keep a pretty low profile, man. Like, I just try to play hockey. And I'm like, okay, enough. How? Like, I was like, you bastard. Like, you beat us at the World Juniors. He's like, I did. I beat you guys, because he's the only one that scored in the shootout. Yeah. So skilled. And he's like, you have Twitter? I was like, of course I have Twitter. So he follows me on Twitter. I was like, okay. Like,
that's your claim to fame now, hey?
Claim to fame. Troy Terry follows me on Twitter.
It's in his bio.
And then he played. But the best part was he got a phone call like the day later. We met because we all went to the Broncos game. He actually got tickets because he was from Denver. And he got a phone call from USA Hockey. Do you want to play on the Olympic team this year? Because it was Sochi in 2014. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to play for the Olympics. And everybody's like, shut up. Like, what? And he played for Team USA at the Olympics as one of their better players when they didn't have the NHLers at.
So most important question with this is, did you beat him in the Chell game?
Absolutely not. Didn't have a chance.
No.
Got speed bagged. I don't think I've actually played NHL in 2 years. I've just been playing Nintendo Switch and working too much. I've let myself down. I do have a girlfriend, so that does help. That's that part.
Well, yeah. It's either have a girlfriend or play Chell.
Or play Chell, pretty much, right? So she's a pretty good person, so I like being around her. So I'll deal with that later.
Jake and I play a lot of Chell, so you just
you're working radio, you have to.
You decipher that, right?
That's fine. I'm so jealous of that, actually.
To go against the argument, though, Gorsey did suck at Chell before he found his girlfriend. So
yeah.
Being single didn't help him there.
Fair enough, man. You can't win on those.
You can't win them all, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we ever told the story officially on the podcast of the time I was blackout drunk, the closest I've been to dying in my life from alcohol. I played Gorsey in a game of Chell and we tied.
I'm pretty sure I drove home that night too.
Yeah, I couldn't see the screen 4 feet away, and Gorsey managed to tie against me.
Well, there you go.
It was a tough go.
We're admitting to crimes on the air. I love this.
Yeah. Hey, this is what happens when we bring on former broadcasters.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's wild.
Oh man, it's great. That's awesome. That's the radio life, though, right? Like you go to every bar, you drink everybody under the table or try to, and then people kind of got criticized. I heard you were drinking quite a bit at the bar. This is in Melfort again.
Yep.
And I got a couple more stories on that, but
in there.
It was at Drafties. Is that still a thing?
Yep,
Drafties?
It's still called Drafties,
Wonderful.
and we still go
back
there once in a while.
It's a great place. There was no Boston Pizza. There's no McDonald's. The Tim Hortons had just opened when I worked there. So there was
I want to ask you about that story, but tell us this Drafty story first.
Well, it's not much of a story. It's just I got drunk one night and whatever. Like walked home. I walked home all the time. Like why?
It was close
Like,
enough.
why would I risk it?
Yeah.
And it was like, I heard you got pretty drunk and loud at the bar. I was like, and who the fuck cares? And that was like my answer that came out of my mouth. And everybody's like, you can't act that way. I was like, other people do. Why can't I? Well, you're a leader of the community. I was like, no one knows my name here. Like, I don't care whatsoever. Then Melford Slow Pitch League almost got ejected one game. It was great. So
Really?
yeah, me and Lyndon Harper. You know him, eh?
Lindy, like I play hockey with Lindy's one of my close friends here.
He was mine too. And I don't know what happened. I swore at a guy or somebody was trying to fight him, and then I almost got kicked out. And I was like, this is slow pitch in Melford. We're gonna get tossed. I'm like, this ought to go well in the news. We'll have an assault charge to read on the air. So yeah. No, it didn't ever happen.
You mentioned the Tim Hortons, and you were if I'm not mistaken, the second customer at the Melfort Tim Hortons.
Sure was. I covered that live when it opened at 6 a.m. and I let the old lady in front of me go first, or else I would have been first. I would have been the first person, but I needed the story. I was like, well, I could kill two birds with one stone here. I could get my Tim Hortons in 30 seconds instead of 15. So I interviewed her. So and everybody's like, you wasted a whole morning for one story. I was like, did you go to Tim Hortons at 6 a.m., Daryl? I don't think so. Hey, whatever, Matt. Small town radio. That was big. That was huge. Like there was chaos. I remember when they were building it. Like people would drive and like look like, oh, when's it gonna be ready? I was like, guys, construction. Like
the McDonald's was the same way.
Oh, I don't like. It was everybody knew because we dropped it on the radio station that it was opening the next day, and I got up early. Like I was there at like 5:30 or whatever. I can't remember, and I got there and I just freaking did it. And the debit machine wasn't working like 2 hours into it, so there was just like chaos and panic in Melford over at Tim Hortons. That was back when their coffee was good.
Yeah. So one thing we ask all of our guests. You were part of a junior B championship in Whitecourt. Have you been a part of any other championships?
Actually, when I did Dogs baseball 2 years ago in baseball, I did it. Okay. I called a championship for baseball on their webcast. That's about it. I haven't had many championships. I've had long runs. Yeah. I finally got an AJHL championship a few years ago when the Oilers went on that big run, but they lost to Spruce Grove. And it was I haven't had much championship experience. I was close. Like before the pandemic, I thought the Oilers were going to win the whole league, but at least get to the South Final, but that didn't happen. So, well, yeah, it's not even about championships anymore. It's just getting to call quality hockey games with quality storylines. It's all about the story. And I look at guys like Peter Labardius, who's one of my mentors and best friends, and I got to do color with him on Shaw TV for Dogs baseball and the WCBL. And he taught me so much about preparation and doing the right thing. He's like, Gino, you cannot be a part of it. You're not the game. You're part of it. And, always like the product's the number one thing. And to tell the story properly and prepare. I'll never forget that about what Lewis told me. And I still keep in touch with him. And the same with Chris Cuthbert. He gave me spotting boards. And I ever grateful for that. And it kind of led me to a storyline where I called the last game at Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton before they tore it down. It was Okatoks versus Spruce Grove. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And no trophies were handed out, but it was just magic. It was magic the whole game. You prepared, you got guests from all parts of the world. I had Ryan Smith, we had Grant Fuhr, we had so many celebrities, and just the stories they told. And the story, along with some pretty good, play-by-play. If you get to a good point, you get those reps. It doesn't matter where you're going or what league you're in. It doesn't matter. You just got to have some good, rhetoric in you. Whether it's, and this goes to my so-called intellect, which is going to go pretty shallow here in about 2 seconds. But I've always kind of studied the 4 parts of the main principles of rhetoric, which is ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. And that's how I did my thesis on play-by-play. So, and I always have stuck to that. Like, do you have knowledge? Do you sound okay? Do you look the part? Do you not look like a slob? Do you have the ultimate timing? It all kind of comes together. So now that's the less boring part, and not crashing into ditches and almost killing, killing others, right?
That is about as smart as this podcast has ever gotten.
And that's scary that it came out of my mouth. That's not good at all.
Speaking of championships, and the one story or the one thing we like to ask is, do you have any good stories about the trophy? Any good trophy stories? Because we've heard that the WHL championship trophy, it floats.
That's fair.
There's a couple of other ones that are really good, but do you have any good ones?
You know, I don't think I have a legit trophy story.
Okay.
I don't think I do, or like a celebration story. I remember, and I'll go to the junior B days. That's where the best celebration was, because these kids earned it. They celebrated. They got their stuff. We got on the bus. We got to, like, we were in Okatoks. So we got out of Calgary, and you would think the bus was rocking. No, everybody was sleeping. They were so exhausted. And then they got their sec, but everybody was tired. And Norm Lacombe, who was the coach of that team, he won a Stanley Cup with Edmonton. He has a pretty good story. I don't know if I'll tell it on this podcast, because I'm sure it's not. If I know it, I don't think it's a secret really. But he said, just wait. And we got to Devon, which is about 2.5, 3 hours away from Whitecourt. And he just said, Kim, honk the horn. Honk. Everybody just sprung out and just ran to the liquor store, because that's where we stopped at, right? And just grab your stuff, and then it was just game on until Whitecourt, and then they had the after party, and the party went on for like 2 days. It was incredible. And yeah, Norm Lacombe's story was about when they won the cup in '90. I don't know who ran the car over. I want to say Glenn Anderson did, but they ran the Stanley Cup over with the car because they couldn't find it, and they ran it over, allegedly.
Oops.
Allegedly, maybe he was pulling my leg, but I guess they pulled the dents out of a tire, or out of a body shop the next day, because they had the parade, and Glenn Sather, I guess, was losing his absolute mind because they didn't know where the cup was, right? So apparently the Stanley Cup has been run over. Whether that's actually true or not, I don't know. He might have been pulling my leg though. But I believe it. I believe it. I don't know if he'd make up a story that you ran over the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and
that's their fifth one at the time. So what's the difference, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned a few minutes ago calling the last game at Northlands or Rexall Place, Skyreach Center, whatever the hell you want to call it. I called it Rexall Place.
It was hilarious.
Did you? Yeah. I know
always.
It is Skyreach and Rexall. Those were the two that I knew.
I remember Skyreach.
And I think the boys would agree that it was Skyreach and Rexall, right?
How
cool was that to be the last game at that rink?
It was super cool, because I'd been to one Oiler game where they played Vancouver. That was during my time in Whitecourt. I got free tickets that night, and that's when Edmonton had Jordan Eberle and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Taylor Hall. They were supposed to be pretty good, but they weren't. And the Sedins were incredible that night. But the rink itself, man, that place has stories to tell. And we just scratched the surface. Like, when the players got there, they were treated like royalty. I think the Oilers obviously were the road team, so they were in the road dressing room, which is where the Oil Kings, I think, where their dressing room was. And you got to see like etches of certain guys who would play there. There was signed like roof tiles. I saw Paul Coffey's name. You saw Gretzky's, but it was protected. It had a little sheet of glass over it, and I'm sure that'll go into somewhere. And I feel if I would have had like some power tools, I could have stole a seat that night. It would have been super cool. Like, that's, I look back, I was like, I should have stole something from Rexall just to say I did, but I didn't want to get in trouble. So I'm sure someone would have saw me. And people were just at that last game. It was free. It was free attendance, and people were just walking around the concourse, and just like, I got popcorn here. I took my son. I was like, holy, like, you definitely came here for a different reason than watching a hockey game. But it was the last time anybody could go in there. I think maybe they probably have had a couple games, or before they knocked it down, or I don't even know if it is knocked down.
Nope, it's not knocked down quite yet.
Not yet. It's like a parking lot or something, though. Or
it's just kind of sitting there dormant.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's played there or done anything since. So, well, obviously not right now, but yeah, like, it was just it's such a great historical rink, and Grant Fuhr had a pretty good story. Ryan Smith, when they went on that '06 run, they said you couldn't even imagine. Like the '80s, I think were quiet compared to that run. So
Yeah.
it was cool. Like it was super cool to be the last one there, and I was the last one to sign off.
No, there you go. That's kind of a cool.
I was we were one of the last guys to leave. Like we milked that as long as we could, and we stayed, and then we drove. And the trader's like, "Well, we have to get to Drayton Valley." I'm like, "We're going to Drayton Valley tonight. We're not going to stay in Edmonton. Nope, going straight to Drayton." The trader, one of the cheapest human beings on the planet. I was like, we lost that game the next day in Drayton.
Oh.
Just saying, shouldn't have stayed in Drayton. Should have stayed in Edmonton and relished it, and then treat it like you're traveling to a road game, not living in the town. I've always been big on that. Like, don't stay where you're going to play next. Drive to your next place. But whatever.
There you go.
I digress.
Yeah, boys. Any other questions for Gino? We've covered a lot.
No, we hit all the bases that we usually cover here. Some great stories there.
I gotta ask. You mentioned it earlier, and I thought it would get brought up, but now that it hasn't, I gotta circle back. So earlier in the podcast, you said you've pissed off commissioners. I want to hear at least one story of how you were able to piss off a league commissioner and what that whole thing was like.
I spoke my mind, to be honest. I think we were just in passing, and I can't remember what I said. I was like, it's gonna be I think it was like, it was. I won't name the commissioner because he'll probably watch this and fine me. I've been fined twice, $1,000 at a time. So I've been fined $2,000 in my time, and I paid both the fines. So and I just kind of said the one time I ripped the refs for pretty much blowing a game when it was Brooks Okatoks in the South Final Game 5, and what had happened, it was a missed icing call, and then the puck was in the Cale Makar was on this Brooks team, and it's whatever, that team was probably going to win the series, but at least it gave us some hope. But they got to overtime in Game 5, and the missed icing, so everybody's already backed up like, wait, what, there's no icing in overtime? So Brooks goes and fetches the puck, and they just throw it to the front of the net. The goaltender, Riley Morris, just tries to cover it. It bounces a little bit, and then all of a sudden there's a pile up in front of the net. Like there is a scramble, and then the puck goes in, and they call it a goal. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You do not end an overtime game on something like that. You at least talk about it. Didn't even talk about it once. And I was livid because they had the Jumbotron. I was like, I'd love to see the replay right now. And I looked over, and they're obviously not going to play it. Like, why would you? And I was just losing it on the air. And my friends were texting like, bring it back in, Gino, settle down. I was like, nope, not letting this one go. Nuh-uh. And then I called out the refs by first and last name on Twitter. And then I got fined.
Ooh, that was probably your first mistake there.
Yeah, but the funny thing is about that, they're on the game sheet. So It's not like it's not common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But whatever. I got mad. I lost my cool. I got fined. I said, and you know what? I said, money well spent. It had to be said. And it was funny because one of the refs that I called out, I talked to the next year, because I always, when I do games for the Oilers, I sit in between the benches in warmups. I don't know if I'll be ever able to do that again, but and we just talked about it. He's like, I hear you had a little bit of a problem with my calls. Like, yeah, you blew it in Game 5. He's like, that's fair. And the next guy next to me is like, yeah, he blew it. I was like, I guess my tirade stopped from being penalized, so, or something like that. So, I have a pretty good relationship with refs on the level. And then I got fined 2 years later, and it wasn't even my fault, but because the commissioner said, well, it was on Gino's broadcast, but it was my color commentator. I was like, I didn't actually say anything. So they fined the team $1,000. It was always fined to the team, but it was my fine. And I just said, I'm like, you coward. Like, if you have a problem with me, come talk to me. Don't just hide. I'm right here. And I'm open to conversation always, as I am here with you good folks today.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So I was just so mad. It just ruined, like somebody just tries to suck the life out of you, just bring it down a notch. I'm like, okay, like, come on. Like, okay, whatever.
Oh,
you live and you learn, right? You live and you learn.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a great spot to end it, unless you guys got anything else to ask Gino here tonight. No, I mean, Gino,
What's
I
your
appreciate
beer thing? What's your beer thing? I missed out on this beer. Or do you do that after I leave?
No, we did. Sorry, we just do the cheap goods scale.
Hey, ours are pretty basic right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm drinking Budweiser.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah,
Good
Coors
summer
Light
beer.
over here.
Miller High Life here.
Oh, yes. Funny story with the
So-
Millers. There was the Miller Chills back in the day with the lemon beer. I would stack them all at Ken Singer's house on like make it look like a trophy case. He didn't like that either. So he's like, please take those down. They'll attract ants. I'm like, fair enough. Gotcha.
Good point. Ants,
Ah,
right?
good ants, right?
Yes.
You know, your house, it's not mine, it's yours. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gino, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for taking
Loved
some
it.
time out and shooting the shit with us. And this was lots of fun, man. We'll have to bring you on
anytime,
again.
guys.
We'll have to bring you and Crow on at some point.
And Daryl Mann. You got to bring Daryl
And Daryl
Mann.
Man, we're gonna bring Daryl Man on at some point. You know,
I love that man. He's one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Absolute favorite.
Thanks for doing this, buddy. This was a pleasure.
I love it. And you guys keep doing what you're doing, man. I love these new platforms. I don't care. It's like, oh, well, it's just like, dude, no one else is trying it. Like some people are, but you guys are doing a bang up job. I've subscribed. I've got like the podcast thing. I'm getting into it. So
There you go.
just keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate
Thanks, but that's a great pump up for us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Just keep swinging. Just keep swinging that axe, man.
All right. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks, brother. To you guys.
Yeah.